Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We are redoing all of the Master Set players from NHL 22's Hockey Ultimate Team. If you haven't watched my prior videos, I go over the Halloween Rivals event and who I would have picked for those Master Set players, as well as the Superstar Origins event, and I would love to hear your feedback on them. Up today, we are going to discuss the Fantasy Hockey Evo event, which is personally my favorite event every single year. I think any event that ties in the real NHL is always going to be the best type of event. However, I will say this before we get into it. I think the Evo event should be the first event of the year. I didn't want to go and switch around the events. I wanted to keep this very simple and just go in order of the releases and go through which cards I think should have been included. And the Evo event, I think I just want to, again, we'll talk about the Master Set players. I want to discuss what I would have done with the Evo event. So how I think the Evo event should work is I think that there should be a representative of a younger player or maybe someone who isn't guaranteed to score a lot of goals, and they should be start at 80 overall maybe, and maybe their career highs around 20, much like what happens or what they try to do in this event throughout, is they try to make it where they get to the high 90s late in the year, and I think they've done a pretty bang-up job, except for obviously Matt Duchene, who just came flying out of the gate, and there was nothing you can do to control him, and that is my favorite part of this event, is that is a possibility. So my honest opinion is that everyone should get a free one from their favorite team. I think that is a necessity going forward, because the great thing about this event is that, man, how many people were watching Nashville Predator games just because they wanted to see a Matt Duchene scored? One of my favorite cards of all time was the Fantasy Hockey Brady Tkachuk card, and I remember watching Ottawa Senator games waiting to see if he would score, just, you know, on some nights where, you know, I didn't have much going on. And I think that anytime you have that, Twitter would explode, all of that. I love it, but I think everyone should have kind of horse in the race. So if you are a fan of the Sharks, you should get an Evo Kevin Labanc card, or you get what I'm saying here. So since I can't redo the entire style of the event, we're going to just focus on the Master Set players for this series. So let's go into who I would select for the Evo cards this year. All right, so obviously just going over the Master Set players that we got, Matt Duchene honestly was close to like the perfect selection because he had a few down years, and again, not a player that's high profile enough to get an X Factor card, but still decent enough, and again, would represent the Nashville Predators pretty well. And then you got Jordan Kyrou, again, another really bang-on selection, I'm not gonna lie. For anyone that doesn't watch Blues games, obviously you didn't really know how good Jordan Kyrou was, and this year, I think his Evo card helped a lot of people that maybe don't follow the Blues realize how good he was. As a Sharks fan, I have seen Jordan Kyrou a lot, and he has always been a phenomenal player, and really frustrating if you were not a fan of the St. Louis Blues. We also got Sebastian Aho, which I think was a weird selection here. I think this is one of the ones I will definitely replace. And we also got Ilya Sorokin. Again, I think a pretty decent selection here, giving a young, a young goaltender that wasn't anticipated to explode and hit 99 early on. I think that's something that we need to remember, is that the selections for this event can't be guys that are going to pop off and hit 99 immediately. That just kind of breaks the game. So that was two other options. We also got Jonas Brodin. This would definitely have been one that I would not have selected, just as well as Neil Pionk. I think this might have been the start of some of the worst ones. And again, I don't want to harp on the content team too much. It's just that, like, there are so many other options that I would have rather have, and I get defensemen were a little bit tougher because they don't score a lot, and they did go up by +2, so that kind of limits who you can pick. But Neil Pionk, even as a Jets fan, I don't know if you were super excited to get this card. So those were the 6 Master Set players from the event. So again, it was Neil Pionk, Jonas Brodin, as well as Sebastian Aho, Ilya Sorokin, Jordan Kyrou, and Matt Duchene. So let's go ahead and see if we can't come up with some better options. All right, so there's some caveats in this event that we need to talk about. One is trying to predict. Now, obviously, we have the luxury of going back and seeing who would be around 99 at this stage of the game. So we can't pick guys that, you know, came out of nowhere a lot. Like, I think you have to remember that when they pick these cards, they remain pretty safe. The one issue I have with the Hut Evo event is that they start out very, very low, especially forwards. So the issue is that free-to-play players, they can't get a card they can use for their team. They have to wait for that card to perform well enough in the NHL. So what I think should happen in this event is, again, right around 20 goal scorers, as well as defensemen. 10 goals is really where they land, and I think that there is some really good cards in this event that they picked, maybe not for Master Set players that should have been. And we're going to start on right defense with Charlie McAvoy. So again, not good enough to get an X Factor card, but still one of the better players in the league, would give Boston a really good Evo card. Again, I think he should have gotten the Master Set card. Right around 10 goals is where he's probably going to land, and I think that was easy to, or like kind of where you would expect. Again, defensemen go up by +2, whereas forwards go up by +1, which I think is fair. Obviously, they're not going to score nearly as much. So I think Charlie McAvoy would have been a really good option for a Master Set player in this event. Again, we want really exciting players, I think, or at least to have some that are bigger names. I think Zach Werenski would have been a great option for this event as well as the left-handed defenseman. So a left-handed Evo, Werenski, and McAvoy would have added a lot more flair to this event and given us some more viable options to hit 99 than Pionk and Brodin. I understand what they were doing, but I just think those selections weren't very good, and I think Werenski and McAvoy would have been a much better option for those two players. And then the forwards, I think they almost got them bang on. But I will say, Jared McCann should have been a Master Set player for this event, and let me explain why. It wasn't that he was expected to pop off and have a very good season with Seattle, but I think Seattle should have gotten a focus here because new team in the league, give the guys, give their fan base and everyone around a reason to watch Seattle Kraken games. And I think a Master Set Jared McCann, obviously we know now that he became a 99. I think he performed well overperformed, but it was easy to see with top-line minutes, much like a Vegas situation where you take a lot of players that weren't receiving top-line minutes, thrust them into, the number one role. Think of like William Karlsson for the Vegas Golden Knights. I think that you could see that he was going to have a pretty decent season regardless. I think he would have been a really fun card. His build is nice, and it would have given Seattle a card, and not just for Seattle fans, but for anyone around the NHL. So tune into Seattle fans or Seattle games, which I think is an important thing to remember in this event. So Jared McCann would have been a Master Set player in my opinion. And then I'm not going to lie, for forwards, I'm actually completely okay with Matt Duchene and Jordan Kyrou. Again, two players that are not good enough to get X Factor cards. Jordan Kyrou, a really young, exciting player that a lot of people don't get to watch, and I think that is an added bonus for this event. Giving players on teams that aren't watched outside of their markets a ton. I think Jordan Kyrou was a perfect example of that. And then Matt Duchene has been in like an all-time hut card for a really long time. I don't think anyone expected him to explode like he did early on this year because he scored in bunches and just absolutely blew it away early on. And again, the way that I think the Evo event should work is that this should be the very first event of the year, so you can't see halfway through or a month and a half into the season who's doing well and kind of give you that. It kind of messes with the event because Matt Duchene was already, I believe, an 86 overall when this event came out, and he was the fastest skater in the game, essentially, so it was a no-brainer to make him. If this was made and done the very first day of the season, it'd have been a little bit more of a risk, and I think it would have been a lot more fun for those players to invest in. But again, in the way that I would do the Evo event is that all forward and defensemen and goaltenders start at 80 overall, so that if they score a couple in the first week, they're very, very usable quickly. And I don't think that they'd be overpowered. It would still take them quite a long time to actually get up there. Now, again, Matt Duchene exploded, now seeing it, but I don't think anyone would have expected that kind of goal performance, given how the last few years have went. So, honestly, I think they did a great job. I think Jordan Kyrou and Duchene are both good selections. There's obviously other ones that you could have gone with, and I think Jared McCann should have been the other forward Master Set player. Now, in terms of the goaltender, I'm not going to lie, Sorokin is a good option, but I think, again, with my format, everyone would start at 80 overall, and let's say a win just goes up by +1. I think that would be maybe a shutout goes +2. If you're going to start at 80 overall, I guess Sorokin kind of makes sense because he was going to split time. Now, the other option that I would go with, again, I'm kind of wrestling between this, would have been Igor Shesterkin. Again, another young, great goaltender, having an incredible year. No one anticipated to have one of the all-time great seasons this early into his career, even though he is 25. That being said, I think it would have been a little bit better of a selection because Sorokin was really splitting time. He didn't really have the crease all to himself. I think Shesterkin would have been a bit better of an option, but I'm completely okay with Sorokin in all honesty. So guys, let me know what you think of my selections for this event and who you would have chosen. Again, I think that the Evo event should be done completely differently in terms of it being the very first event of the year, and I think that everyone should get a card for the team that they choose. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.